Hi, everyone. If you are looking for this session, Are You Open for Business? You're in the right place. And you're in the right place if you have been paying attention to the fact that corporate purpose and companies working with charities to achieve their corporate purpose is more popular than ever. So it's the perfect time to be thinking to yourself, is my organization open for corporate business, open for corporate funding, open for corporate sponsorship? That's what we're going to talk about in our session today. And I'm hoping what will happen is you'll take away a nugget or two, an idea or two that you haven't heard before that helps you with raising more money from companies. So before we get started, I'd like to share a land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which each of us call home. I am on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Huron-Wendat Nation, and on these lands I enjoy hiking and connecting with nature as an important part of my life. This is very close to my heart. With that in mind, I ask you to join me in reaffirming our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. I welcome you sharing your thoughts from what lands you are on in the chat. And maybe something that is special to you about the lands in which you reside. Thank you. Okay, so now to get started talking all things corporate partnerships, I want to warm up a bit, and we are going to use the chat throughout this session to make sure that we're connecting and learning from each other, and hopefully, just feeling energy around this topic. Okay, so you can put questions at any time, and I'm in the chat, and we'll do my best to answer them. But to get started, I want you to answer the question: do you have current partners currently? And then if you say yes to that, how about is your organization just getting started? Maybe has a couple, so a few, or this is new to you. It really isn't an area that your organization or you yourself have had a lot of experience with. And if that's the case, put me. All right, I love seeing all the different things. And honestly, it is my hope that there will be something for everyone in this session. So stay tuned for that. Okay, who doesn't want to start with a story? And a story of a win. Honestly, with this story in my background, it's no surprise that I've committed myself to corporate partnership. One day I got a phone call. I was the only fundraiser at this organization, a super small organization, and I was in charge of fundraising and marketing communications, e-newses, direct mail, the whole thing. And the phone rang, and the individual on the other end was from Europe, and they were talking about $1 million partnership. No exaggeration, right from the first call, $1 million partnership with our organization. They were looking for a North American-based international development organization that worked with young people. I was like over the moon. This partnership did work out. But what the important nugget was, is how he decided to pick up the phone was by our website. He's like, I looked at your website. You had such compelling pictures, such a compelling brand. I wanted to call. We had worked so hard on this that it was like music to my ears. But it was an important reminder really early in my career, back then social media wasn't so much a thing, that you're open for people to evaluate you as a partner before the first conversation. His decision was made before he even called me. He was really committed to making it work. How great was that? So with that story in mind, let's talk about what we're going to work through today. For those of you I have not met before, I am so glad you're here and I appreciate you taking the time. I am a professional fundraiser and I'm a corporate fundraising specialist. I have my own business. It's called Bridge Raise. We're a small boutique consultancy with 4 or 5 consultants, and we work exclusively on corporate partnerships with charities and nonprofits. So super specialized. It allows us to keep up to date on what is going on. And I'm also a proud mentor and fundraiser and instructor of all things fundraising. I love meeting new and up and coming fundraisers and people who are coming back to the sector or entering the sector from the corporate sector. All of that. So do reach out to me if any of those are you. And I like to tell you a little bit about myself so that you have some different hooks. I'm a huge traveler. Now that we're exiting our COVID times, I'm getting back to that. I'm actually leaving on a trip very shortly, so squeezing this presentation in before that was, just a joy for me. I love dogs. I'm also a hockey mom of a teen boy, so that takes up a lot of time in my winter season. I communicate mostly on LinkedIn, although I do have an Instagram account and a Twitter account. And for today, don't hesitate to tag me with our hashtag for the day. Okay. So with that said, today what we're going to cover. We're going to cover corporate fundraising from 3 different kind of angles. One is your role as an individual. How do you need to, set yourself up for success from a mindset perspective, and really how do you think about corporate partnership? We're going to talk about what you need at your organization on the internal basis, what really sets you up for success. And then on an external basis, what are some things that will really help with being open for business when you're talking about your board, your website, your social media, that kind of things. It is about the practical, but it's also about a bit about, in all of these cases, about how you approach it and what are some suggestions for making it happen at your organization. Okay, so is this you? Are you at the point where you really understand the value of what your organization has to offer, and as an organization, you're loud about that? Or are you like my friend Barb, who is working at an organization who really wants to get corporate money, but they want to do it quietly, right? They'd rather not have it shouted from the rooftops. Or maybe you're at a place where you've had a few successes, but right now with COVID and all that, you're feeling a little hesitant in the area of corporate fundraising. No matter where you're at right now, it's fine. You can find a path forward, and finding some tips on how to move into action is going to be one of the things we're going to start with when we talk about the internal side of fundraising. So pop in the chat for me. I'd feel really good about corporate fundraising if. What would the end of that sentence look like? Could it be if my partners were aligned on values? If I enjoyed having the conversations? How about if the rest of the team at my organization also felt good about it? Put some ideas in there. I mean, I really think no matter what spot you're in, there is some piece of that that could help you feel good about corporate fundraising, and hopefully we'll tackle making you feel good about it today. Okay, so with that said, category number 1 is all about you. It's all about you as a corporate fundraiser, whether it's off the side of your desk or your entire role. Let's talk about mindset and let's talk about confidence. Honestly, the elephant in the room with mindset is really focusing in on, do you feel your organization has value for a corporate audience, for a corporate partner? Whatever that value is, whether it's employee engagement, it's an audience, it's making an impact that aligns with their purpose. Really believing that your organization is worthy of the support and has something to add to the equation. So it's not all about, sort of asking for a favor or feeling apologetic that you need to ask, but it really is standing in the power of, my organization is awesome. We do amazing things, and this company gets value from that. That mindset is so, so, so important. And spending some time with yourself and ensuring that that's the place from which you reach out, from which you write your emails, will have a world of difference in how corporate fundraising works for you. I also always try to remind people that taking the best action is just to take action. We can really solve for anything if we take action. If you're in a position where you understand your organization's value and then you reach out, then you get some information. You have a conversation, even if it doesn't go well, you have more information. All of those bits of pieces of information help you build a better corporate partnership with that company or with future companies. So taking action is one of the mindset strategies that I encourage everybody to adopt. But when you're thinking about this value side of the equation, how do I add value? There is like some different ways to think about that. So mindset number one, add value by providing a service that they need. For example, employee engagement or stories related to the purpose that they want to have an impact in. You can also solve a problem for a company, right? If they're having a recruitment problem, perhaps aligning with your organization will help them with that. Or if they've had bad press, is there an opportunity for them to share about a partnership with you so they can change the narrative that is out in the world? That would be you solving a problem. And your organization can also present an opportunity, something new for them to talk about, a new way of aligning with a brand, a new way of sharing their commitment to the cause with their audience or with their employees. These are all opportunities. So when you think about what your conversation is going to be, think about these prompts as ways to frame up why you're having a conversation about investment from a company in your organization. The other side of mindset is talking about confidence. Our confidence when we show up in our communications and in a phone call and in a meeting are such a big part of corporate fundraising. And I do hear from clients who have confidence in all kinds of fundraising that sometimes when they're faced with a corporate meeting or a corporate opportunity, they don't have the same confidence in their abilities and their skills. And, you know, to that I say there are things we can do to build up your confidence and to figure out what your style of doing this is. Everybody's isn't the same, right? So how can we align where your skills are with what needs to happen for corporate fundraising so that it fits well together? So with that in mind, let's talk about a few confidence builders or things you can do to sort out your approach. The first thing I want to share is that practicing is a part of the equation. Honestly, corporate fundraising is a muscle that you have to practice, right? You have to get more experience. The first call, the first meeting is not going to be as good as a future one, right? So don't compare yourself to somebody else that you may have seen do a meeting, or someone else who seems like they probably have it all figured out. If that person has done a ton of meetings before, then they've built up their practice and they have some cues that they're looking for, some questions and answers that they're expecting based on their experience. So the first thing is give yourself grace around the fact that corporate fundraising does take practice, and getting better at it is part of the exercise. One of the ways you can get practice is I have a client who works in youth mental health, and she is so passionate and has so much knowledge about the cause. Her confidence is very high there. But it's less high. It was less high in the area of what her offer for corporate was. And not only that, she found that when she got on these calls, she started telling them all about everything to do with the organization and the cause that she feels so passionately about. And sometimes the meetings therefore didn't go as smoothly because she didn't get to the part where it's like, what's in it for the company? So we did some practice together where we simplified what she was needing to share, and we spent time getting clear on what she was offering the company. And this helped frame out her conversation, the script and the flow of what she wanted to have happen. And so then she could borrow the confidence she has and how much she knows about this cause into what she has to offer companies. So I suggest that that sort of practice might be a trick that works for you. Beyond that, here are a few additional suggestions. Okay, prepare by knowing the desired outcome. And I know that when we're doing fundraising, we get really focused on this number. Often we put a number against a company very, very early in the process, right? And then our desired outcome becomes, how fast can I get to this proposal? And sometimes we even try to shrink time so much by getting on the call and immediately trying to get to the proposal in that 30-minute or 60-minute call. My first piece of advice on successful corporate fundraising is, yes, prepare by knowing the desired outcome, but make that a desired outcome something that's realistic for where you're at in the partnership. If this is a first-time conversation, then the desired outcome should be getting to know a little bit about them getting to know a little bit about you, and that you have a next step that you can take, that you're going to share something, that maybe you're going to do a draft proposal, maybe you're going to have another meeting to ask some more questions, right? So desired outcome, and make it really realistic. Practice what you want to say. I do always go through a couple of tough questions that might come up and practice my answers in advance of a call. The easy stuff is the easy stuff, but what if they ask me something that I'm not sure about? Maybe they have, a not great story about my organization. What am I going to say? I also recommend having an inner mentor. What's that? That's you. That's you, but you with a little bit more experience, or you having lived through a couple more of these calls. What would that person tell you to do? How important would that person, that voice in your head, make this one meeting or this one situation? See if your inner self can give you a bit of a pep talk before a call or a big meeting. And if you don't have an inner mentor, maybe you have an outer mentor or a friend. Phoning a friend and getting a cheerleading conversation before you go into a meeting is a great strategy. And finally, borrow confidence from me. Know that I know that, I know that you can do it. I know that you are a great corporate fundraiser, maybe already, or if not, then in waiting. And using some of these strategies, you can have a great conversation that builds towards an aligned corporate partner. If you need me to tell you that straight up, reach out. Okay, so quick check-in here. What tip might work for you? Write it down, pop it in the chat, or do you have some other tips that do work for you? If you've been in this business a little while and you have some confidence building tips or some mindset tips, I'd love to see you share them in the chat. I know I learn from other people all the time on strategies that they use. So please do be generous with your ideas in the chat. Okay, so moving out of internal, we're going to move into moving out of individual. We're going to move into internal here. What do we need to put in place? Honestly, when people are coming to my sessions, I think this is what they think we're going to talk about the most. And while these things are important, what you need in terms of an offer, guidelines, materials, it isn't the only thing. So I don't spend all my time here, but I am going to spend a bit of time to help you get a few things in place. So, internal requirements. First, you need an offer. We use a ton of words to describe an offer. Is this the benefits you have? Is this assets? Is this audience? Is this program impact? Could be all of those things, but it's you thinking about what you're offering to the company. Then you need program guidelines. Program guidelines is my shorthand for who we're going to take money from and for what. Having these guidelines in place can really, really help you, because sometimes we get in a situation where a company is asking for things and we start getting into service mode or donor-centered mode, and where they are asking and we're just giving and giving and giving. And then we end up giving so much that it wasn't really worth it. And when that happens, people hate corporate partnerships. You know what? The way to establish good corporate partnerships is make sure that you're giving proportional to what the value exchange is, and having that written down ahead of time, super helpful. We do need some materials. It is very helpful to have an introductory PowerPoint or introductory deck that helps describe your organization and your offer in a really easy to share method. The simple message, the clear offer. If you have this in place, then you can always adjust it. But having it in place really, really can help you adjust and save time. And finally, time. For most of us, this is like the toughest resource to have. Successful corporate fundraising happens a little bit at a time, over time. It is the best strategy to have a few hours a week or a few hours every couple of weeks to work away at it than to have a lot of time once a year. I find often if we're connecting our corporate partnerships to a specific event, we go quiet, 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 and then there's a huge amount of activity all at once when we want to secure our corporate sponsors. If you want to move to partnership and more money, the strategy is to make that a year-round cycle. It will help you for sure. I am going to spend a couple of minutes here on terminology, and the reason I'm doing that is because as we talk about guidelines and offer and materials, when we meld different types of corporate fundraising into one pile, sometimes it gets confusing what we need in what situation. So one grouping of funding from companies is corporate grants and philanthropy. This money tends to be for the organization's mission and for program-related funding. Okay, so that's one category. The philanthropy side is a shrinking category. Corporate grants, there is money for that, especially at big institutions through their foundations. So we do still see that. But more and more, there's what I call corporate partnership, which has more than just delivering on impact. The second category is sponsorship. Again, we use this as a bit of a catch-all, but really corporate sponsorship in its truest form means that they're getting a very clear marketing benefit for their money. So audience size, the number of attendees at your event, the number of people in your social media audience, the number of beneficiaries to your program, size and depth of impact are very important for sponsorship. I feel like most of us do corporate partnership, and I use this to cover off those partnerships where they may be giving to an event, but they're giving much more than makes sense from an audience perspective because they're mixing in a bit of philanthropy with it, or they're mixing in a bit of employee engagement with it. They may be giving to your organization for program funding, but they also want some visibility. So these meshed options I call corporate partnership, and it really is for me the sweet spot for most organizations who cannot deliver on absolute sponsorship, right? Because it gets more different pieces. It also makes stronger partnerships often, and by definition, having a partnership means that there's some values alignment, which is so important. So as I said, thinking about those different types of support, you need different things in place to be successful. So corporate grants and philanthropy, you need a clear proposal and a defined impact. I actually like, having a short, very visual, often in PowerPoint proposal that gets a yes, and then I write the longer thing that goes into the portal so that we don't overwhelm the person that we're having a conversation with. But if you do have that longer document, how do you pull out the key points in an executive summary or in a short form so that we're definitely getting clarity around what we're asking for? Sponsorship is definitely all about the assets and benefits. So the size of your audience, demographic data on them, how can they engage with that audience? And that is almost always captured in a pitch deck. And then corporate partnership, as I said, combines these different things. You're going to have program impact and you're going to have some visibility or how you're recognizing them in combo. And materials vary here, but I do recommend having at least introductory or a pitch deck to get yourself started. Just to inspire, I'm sharing a few different kinds of partnerships in real life, right? And how they show up, whether they show up through sponsorship of awards or through sharing about a bunch of employees that are engaging with a program, or at the smallest level, like sponsoring a little local camp, or at the biggest level, with a huge event and multiple employee engagement opportunities, etc. So there really is like a huge range. But basics only. What do I want to say here? This is what I want to say, is that while we're figuring out all our benefits and our opportunities and organizing them into some sort of framework and then having some guidelines around it, it is in your best interest to keep these as simple as possible. Honestly, it should not take a ton of time of to get this all fixed and settled enough that you can move forward. And I find that sometimes we get distracted by getting these basics in place and we don't get to the important part, which is having conversations with companies. I have a template bundle in my organization that is super affordable, that has, you know, launching off points for all these documents if you need that, but also throughout the sector, there are people who have things that you can build off of and modify. Don't spend all your time here is my, you know, piece of advice. Where you should spend some time is getting internal alignment. I really think that it is very important for your organization to have a good understanding of what your plans are. And the sooner that you get buy-in from the program team and your executive director and your communications people, if that's all different people, then the better. I was working with an environmental organization, and they had such a great opportunity for a variety of companies. The way their organization was set up was really, really conducive to successful corporate partnerships. And they had someone that was doing that work. But they kept on running into obstacles in terms of fulfilling the benefits or sorting out what the benefits would be. And it really came down to the fact that some people in the organizations were really worried about what type of companies that they were going to talk to. So what we decided to do was actually start with the companies that the program team liked. There was companies they were already using the products of, they were already talking to. And so instead of saying, hey, we're going to go out and talk to anybody, we said, let's make a list of companies that you're already working with, that you want to have at your conference, that you want to have their products in your toolkit. And let's go and start having corporate partnership conversations with them. All of a sudden, it totally changed the conversation at this organization about corporate partnership. Is this an opportunity that might work for you? Consider it. So I'm going to ask that question. Are all your team members aligned around corporate partnership? Pop it in the chat. Do you have communications on side with you? Do you have programming on side with you? If you're a single shop, do you have board directors on side with you? How can you take some actions to bring people in? Is this a question of education? Do people need to know more about what you're doing in order to get on side? Okay, external. Okay, this is really, really important. This comes back to the story at the beginning, right? How do we show the world that we are open for business, that we want corporate partners, that we're receiving the money from corporate partners, that we're fulfilling against those commitments? How do we do that? And how do we even do that if we don't have any yet? Well, I have some suggestions for that too. Okay. My home reno story. I imagine everybody on this call has a home reno story, right? Do you all equate it to corporate fundraising? Maybe, maybe not. But this is the thing. I have to do the bathrooms in my house. And so I was starting to think about getting my bathroom fixed. And what did I do? Well, first of all, I definitely called a couple people who I know who had had renovations done in their houses before. That was my first step. And then after I did that, I looked at the website of the organizations that they told me about. And after that, I called them, right? I'd already eliminated a few. So my whole point in sharing this is, what happens when a company wants to partner with somebody? What do? They may call their colleagues at other companies and find out who they've worked with that is super easy and accommodating and gives great benefits and writes solid fulfillment reports. They may check out your website, your LinkedIn, your social media and see, hey, is this an organization that we think will want to work with companies? They may do all of that and then send you an email. So how do you make sure that on a regular basis, if they went and looked at your stuff, it would be top notch, right? How do you make sure that they see an organization that is open for business? Right? So it's important to have external visibility of companies because they're checking you out before they're calling. They're looking towards your public visibility to decide, is this going to be an organization that I should spend the time reaching out to. And when they're looking there, what they're looking for is credibility and trustworthiness among, on your organization's part. And how do they figure that out? Well, they may figure that out by who's on your board. They may figure that out by other corporate partners you have, or if you have government funding or funding from big granting organizations, like the Canadian Arts Council or Ontario Trillium Foundation, those sorts of organizations. Do you have Imagine Canada's standards in place? Like, these sorts of things help determine if you're a credible and trustworthy organization for a corporate partner. That's how we see sometimes we see organizations who are just constantly getting more and more corporate partnerships. You're like, what are they doing that I'm not? They're showing credibility and trustworthiness visibly to their corporates so that more corporate people feel comfortable giving them a call. So you need to be visible. You can be visible in all of these different ways. And it doesn't mean making your social media or your website feed a commercial for corporate fundraising. It's about how do you do this thoughtfully. When you're listing your board directors, do you include where they work? When you have a website, is there a place where people can see, that you want to take a phone call from a company? So, corporate partnership contact section. Is there who you already have as corporate partners put visibly there? Do you say thank you? Within the program section, if there is a big corporate funder on a program, is there a little line that says thanks to this company and this government organization for funding this program? These are little things that you can do. And within social media, yes, those posts that say thank you are great, but even better are the ones where within a post about impact or about something that's going on, you just mention the company and they are part of the story that you want to tell about your organization. I shared a few examples earlier, and I share all the time examples through LinkedIn and through my email list of really great ways of incorporating corporate visibility into your social media without being all about just putting a logo on a page. I'm not interested in seeing that on social media either. I want to see the story that the corporate enables, and that's the best kind of visibility. So I want to ask yourself, will this be a challenge at your organization? What is the challenge at your organization? What do you need to do to solve this problem? Because honestly, it is going to make your work so much harder if your website is broken from a corporate fundraising perspective and your social media is broken from a corporate fundraising perspective, and then you're trying to reach out and make these conversations happen. And between you reaching out and them answering you, they've popped onto those little places and they're not seeing what they want to see. And then you're getting ghosted and you're wondering why, so it is worth a bit of time and a little bit of elbow grease on this side of things before you move on. Having said that, the website does not have to be perfect. Everything doesn't have to be perfect, but a little bit of extra zhuzh here and there will make a big difference. I've got a ton of examples here, and these are from all different sizes of organizations, right? Yeah, we have big organizations like Food Banks Canada, but Food for Kids Ontario is there, or like the corporate partners from some smaller organizations. On this next page, same, right? Some smaller organizations that are showing campaigns and events that they're a part of in their social. Right, so you can do this in all different size organizations with some corporate visibility. Okay, the last piece of external. External is, at the end of the day, also about actually making connections, right? So we can put everything fancy and nice on our website and in our social media, but now we have to connect. So we can connect virtually and in person. I mean, this part of my chat always used to be really focused on how you can get out in the world and meet people. And now I've got kind of this bit of a combo platter of it can work both ways. It can work both ways. So let's think about that. But recognize that more often than not, the person that you call back or the person you email back is someone you've met somewhere or where you have a meaningful connection point, right? So we're looking for that in advance of our outreach. So my suggestion, how do I reach out? Well, let's start with what I call the social media warm-up. That's where in LinkedIn, ideally you start following their organization. You could do this in Twitter as well. Follow their organization, find out what's going on with them, and maybe even with the person that you're likely to meet up with. In a visible way, you're not hiding your visibility, you're letting yourself be seen. Then you can reach out through a LinkedIn message, or you could email or link in a follow-up to a virtual event. So I often hear, oh, there's no way of meeting people now that there's no in-person. There totally is. You go listen to a speech by somebody, virtual webinar, and then you follow up. If it is in person, even better, right? We're going to get some of those coming up, I think, in the next few months, where you can meet somebody and follow up immediately on LinkedIn. Don't leave it, for days and weeks. Like the next day, later that day, when they're in the moment, they're going to just say yes, right? And then email with a hook. We don't have a lot of time left, so I can't spend a lot of time on the hook piece of this equation. But when we're talking about email with a hook, that is leading with the alignment and leading with the most important piece of information, why you know them, why they want to partner with you. Really need to lead with that. Okay, so here we are at the wrap-up stage, right? What did we learn all along the way? It's been a rush through all this stuff because I had so many things I want you to hear about. But let's start with this. Individual. Get yourself some time and some strategies to think about your individual confidence and mindset and doing your best to think about how you can show up most powerfully for your meeting, for your call, for your email. Internally, you want to get clear on your offer. What is it that your organization has of value to this specific corporate partner? Have a few different ones that you really lean into on a regular basis. Figure out how that's basically your hook, how that can be your engagement point. Have some guidelines in place at your organization so that you don't spend time on companies that your organization will not feel comfortable with, that you set financial levels for how much you're asking for it. So that's proportional to the amount of work and the investment you're making in these partnerships. And get some good materials in place that you can use, you can modify, you can adjust, but where you have a launching off point so that it's easy for you to be ready in the moment for that specific meeting. On the external side, your board is your friend when it comes to corporate fundraising. They don't need to open a ton of doors, although if they will, that is amazing. But they do need to show that they are aligned with companies and they're aligned with you. Can they do that through announcements in LinkedIn? Can they do that by giving you their title to use on your website, on your board lists? Can they put your organization on their LinkedIn profile? All of these things are credibility boosters for you in corporate fundraising. Your website has to have corporate visibility on it. It has to show that you partner with companies. If it doesn't, then you need to lean even more into your board or other organizations that fund you, the government, big granting organizations, so that people can see that those type of organizations trust you. Social media is a great tool for both showing that you're open for business by having corporate visibility on your feeds, but also as a way to reach out and warm up relationships by being visible to that company and that individual before you reach out. If you do that, it'll make your connection so much easier. And finally, in the end, you do need to connect, right? You need to send the email of outreach. You need to take that alignment opportunity and put it in front of them. And know that that could take a few follow-ups. No worries. You just follow up respectfully over time until the meeting happens, right? Sometimes it's just the right idea at the wrong time. So what do I want you to take away from this session today? Well, first, Mindset and confidence go together and are important to have set up for success. I want you to build these internal fundamentals, the guidelines and the proposal deck, but keep it simple. Don't make these things super complicated. A couple of pages, a 6 or 7 PowerPoint slides. These are, fundamental, but they don't have to be big and hard. You don't have to spend a huge amount to get them started. Make sure corporate support of your organization is visible. And finally, take action. The more conversations you have, the more your corporate offer, your messaging, all of those things will get better and better. So it is super important to take action, get out there, start having conversations, and get out there. It could be an email and phone and Zoom. It could be actually meeting people, but either way, taking action is really important. Okay, I hope you have some questions. I'm definitely going to answer them in the chat, so please do start popping them in there so that I can answer them. And if we don't have time to get to them today, please know I want to answer your questions. So I'm going to give you my contact information in a second here, and do feel free to follow up with your questions either in the chat now, but you can follow up in all the different ways that you can get in touch with me. I hope you know that I so appreciate you spending this time with me. Time is like the most valuable thing. I feel this every single day, and I want you to know that I value the time you spent. I hope you found a few nuggets that were helpful for you. As I said, please do reach out to me. LinkedIn is honestly the best place for a conversation if you have any questions, or send me an email and I'll definitely answer it. If you want to join my community, through this link you get a few extras, so you could sign up through that link to get weekly emails that I send out. I tell stories, I give tip sheets, I do all kinds of things, hopefully adding value to your corporate partnership. I hear people get a lot of value out of it, so I hope you choose to join that list. As I mentioned earlier, I also have time-saving templates which give you program guidelines, introductory proposal outlines, all those sorts of things. So you can also sign up for those if you want to. I also know that we're having super fun at AFP Ottawa Fundraising Day today, and there's a bit of a scavenger hunt going on. So if you're looking to win at the scavenger hunt, my session word is captivate. I don't know what they were thinking when they gave me that one, but captivate is the word for my session. So please feel free to gain some points with that one. All right, and lastly, please fill out your session evaluations. Know that if you put a higher score on there, that means that I will get asked back to speak at this or future sessions. I super appreciate that. I also appreciate feedback. So I hope this session has been valuable for you, and I'd love to answer some questions. Take care all. Thank you.